I thought I was over him. It had been years since I even said his name out loud, and I'd convinced myself I was past all that high school stuff. The crush, the awkward silences, the way my chest used to flutter whenever he looked my way. But all that confidence went out the window the second I walked into the kitchen that morning and saw him standing there, shirtless, drinking from the milk carton like it was still 2015. Eli, my best friend's older brother. The guy who used to drive us to school in his beat-up Honda Civic, who teased me for being quiet, who somehow made even a school uniform look like it belonged on a runway. And now? Now he was standing in his parents' kitchen. His kitchen like he hadn't just reappeared out of nowhere after vanishing for 4 years. "Still don't knock before walking in, huh?" he said, not even turning around. I froze in the doorway, clutching the breakfast burrito I had grabbed from the gas station on the way over. Yeah. Hi. Smooth. Very smooth. He finally looked over his shoulder, and there it was. That grin. The one that made girls giggle and made me forget what year it was. "Ryan, right?" he said, like he didn't know damn well who I was. "Funny." Eli chuckled and leaned back against the counter, arms crossed. He looked different, broader. A little scruff on his jaw, but his eyes were the same. Sharp, unreadable, and way too pretty to be allowed. I tried to keep my cool, but it felt like my brain short-circuited. "I didn't know you were back in town," I said, walking over to drop my stuff on the counter like I hadn't just done a full-body scan of him. "Got in last night," he said. "Thought I'd crash here for a while. Things didn't really work out in New York. I didn't ask for details. Didn't need to." The guy had always had a mysterious streak, like he belonged in a broody indie film. Whatever happened in New York, it brought him back. And apparently, he was staying. Just great. I was supposed to hang out with Mason, his younger brother, my best friend, but he'd gotten stuck at work. So there I was, alone in the house with the guy that first used to doodle hearts around in my geometry notebook. Eli poured coffee into a chipped mug and pushed it toward me without asking. I took it without thinking, like it was normal, like I hadn't once written an unsent letter to him on my notes app titled, "If You Only Knew." "So," he said, sipping from his own mug, "still working at that indie bookstore?" I blinked. "You remember that?" He shrugged. "You talked about it a lot. Said it was your dream job. That place downtown, right?" I nodded, trying not to smile like a total dork. "Still there." A pause. "Glad to hear it," he said, voice low. For a minute, the only sound was the faint hum of the fridge and the birds chirping outside the open window. I could feel him watching me. I kept my eyes on my coffee like it held all the answers to the universe. "You've changed," he said suddenly. I looked up. "What do you mean?" Eli tilted his head. "You used to flinch every time I looked at you," I blinked. "And now?" He leaned in, resting his elbows on the counter. "Now you look right back." My mouth went dry. That was the beginning. It didn't feel like anything major at the time. Just a weird morning with an old crush who was way too good at making coffee and reading people. But something about the way he looked at me stayed in my head for the rest of the day. Like he saw something in me I didn't realize was showing. And things only got messier from there. Because the next week, Mason told me Eli was staying for the summer. And by the second week, I started finding excuses to show up, even when Mason wasn't home. And one night, when Eli offered me a beer on the porch and said, "Stay a while," with that same lopsided smile, I didn't say no. The porch had always been our spot. Well, Mason's and mine, technically. But now it felt like Eli had quietly claimed it. He was out there most nights after dinner, nursing a drink, sometimes barefoot, always with that quiet, thoughtful air that made him seem like he belonged in a different decade, like he'd just stepped out of an old movie and landed in suburban Oregon by mistake. That night was no different. I was heading home after helping Mason set up for some project in the garage, but when I stepped outside, there Eli was, leaning back in the old rocking chair, beer in hand, porch light casting a soft glow across his face. "Leaving already?" he asked, glancing up. I hesitated on the top step. Thought I'd let you guys have a quiet night. He raised his bottle in a casual toast. Stay a while. I didn't think. Just nodded and dropped into the chair next to him. My heart was already doing stupid gymnastics, but I tried to play it cool. You always this poetic? I asked. Stay a while. You sound like a country song, Eli chuckled. You know me, always full of surprises. That was an understatement. We sat in silence for a minute, the kind of silence that doesn't feel awkward, just charged. The cicadas hummed somewhere in the background, and I let the quiet wash over me. You look good, he said, out of nowhere. I turned. What? He didn't look at me. Just took a sip from his beer and added, You've grown into yourself. I wasn't sure how to respond. I stared out into the yard, trying to act like my stomach wasn't turning somersaults. You were always kind of cute, he added. My head snapped toward him. You're messing with me. Eli finally looked at me, and his eyes didn't have even a flicker of teasing in them. No, he said. I'm not. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word, every glance, trying to figure out what the hell that meant. Because Eli was never like that before. Not with me. I was the awkward kid always tagging along. The one he barely noticed. At least I thought so. But now he was saying things like that, looking at me like I wasn't just Mason's best friend. And I didn't know what to do with it. Things didn't go back to normal after that. At least, not for me. Over the next few days, I kept finding him alone. Not by accident, I started to realize. It was like he was waiting for moments when Mason wasn't around. We'd end up in the kitchen at the same time, or folding laundry, or on the porch again, always at night, always a little closer than necessary. One night, I stayed late. Mason had gone to bed early, exhausted from a double shift, and I was halfway through a bag of chips in front of the TV when Eli walked in wearing sweatpants and a white tee that clung just a little too well. He sat down next to me without a word. I passed him the chips. You're a quiet drunk, he said after a minute. I frowned. I'm not even drunk. You're always a little quieter when you're trying not to say something. I looked at him. You know me that well? Eli didn't answer. He just stared at me for a second, like he was weighing something. Then, before I could ask, he said, You ever wonder? I blinked. Wonder what? What would have happened if I'd said something back then? My chest tightened. Back when? He leaned forward, forearms resting on his knees. You don't think I noticed? How you used to look at me. Back in high school? I went still. You never said anything, I managed. Neither did you. Touché. I was a teenager, I said. You were untouchable? He asked, turning toward me. I laughed, but it came out shaky. Something like that. Well, I'm here now. His voice was soft. No games, no smirking, just a fact laid out in the quiet between us. I don't want to make things weird with Mason, I said, even as my whole body leaned in like gravity was pulling me toward him. Me neither, but he didn't move away. And I didn't either. It didn't happen that night. But it almost did, and the almost was worse than anything else. Because now I knew he felt it too. That whatever this thing between us was, it wasn't just in my head, and I had no idea what the hell to do next. The next few days felt like holding my breath underwater. Eli and I didn't talk about the porch, or the couch, or any of the tension that had been thickening the air between us like humidity before a thunderstorm. We just pretended like nothing was happening, at least on the surface. But every look, every brush of fingers when we passed something between us, the remote, a beer, a napkin, all of it buzzed like static. It was like we were orbiting each other, slowly closing the distance, waiting for someone to make the first move. And then it got complicated. Mason asked if I wanted to go with them to the coast. You've barely been out of the city all summer, he said. We'll just drive up Friday after work, stay at my uncle's cabin. It's chill. Eli was already sitting on the floor, scrolling through some home renovation videos like he didn't care either way. But when I glanced at him, he looked up just briefly, and I swear his eyes held a question. I nodded. Yeah, I'm in. The cabin was a little run down but charming, tucked in the trees a few blocks from the beach. 3 small bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a living room that still smelled faintly like wood smoke and sunscreen. The first night passed without incident. Just beers, a late dinner, and the 3 of us crowded around a busted-up Monopoly board, laughing at Mason's terrible trades. We all crashed early, but Saturday night? That was different. Mason had gone into town to meet some friends from high school. I was in the living room alone, half watching an old action movie when Eli came out of the hallway in a hoodie and joggers, barefoot, holding 2 mugs. Thought you might want something warm, he said, handing me one. It was tea. He remembered, I don't do caffeine after 6. Stupid detail, but it hit me anyway. Thanks, I said, scooting over as he dropped onto the couch beside me. The movie kept playing, but neither of us watched it. We sipped in silence, our shoulders almost touching. Eli was the one who broke it. You ever think about how things could have gone? He asked quietly. I didn't pretend not to know what he meant. Yeah, I said, more than I should. He nodded like he'd expected that, like he'd been thinking the same thing. I used to see the way you looked at me, he said. It was different, like you were trying not to want something. I exhaled, my heart racing. I didn't think you noticed. I noticed, he said, his voice low. My pulse was in my ears. And now? I asked. He looked at me. Now, I don't think I want you to hide it. It wasn't a kiss, not yet, but it was close. His hand landed on my knee, just rested there, warm and steady and intentional. My breath caught in my throat, and still, we didn't look away. The seconds stretched, pulled tight like a wire. I don't want to screw this up, I said, barely above a whisper. You won't, he said. How do you know? Eli smiled faintly. Because I've wanted to know what this felt like for years. Then he leaned in, not quite touching, not quite closing the space, and just hovered there, like he was waiting for me to decide. And I did. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It was slow and steady and everything I never let myself imagine back when I used to sit at the dinner table pretending not to stare at the older brother across from me. Our lips met like it had been waiting to happen. Not some wild, impulsive moment, but something built, earned. His hand slid to the back of my neck, and I leaned into him, feeling the heat between us finally break loose. When we pulled apart, neither of us spoke for a while. But we didn't need to, because it was real now. Whatever happened next, we were in it. We didn't talk about the kiss. Not immediately. We stayed on the couch a while after it happened, our legs touching, his hand still brushing against mine like he wasn't quite ready to let go. The movie had long ended, credits scrolling in silence as if giving us space. Eli leaned back, eyes on the ceiling like he was sorting through thoughts, and I stayed beside him, not trusting myself to speak. It wasn't awkward, but it wasn't easy either. Eventually, he stood up and stretched, his shirt lifting slightly to reveal a sliver of skin that made my already spinning brain tilt even further. I'm gonna crash, he said softly. You okay? I nodded. Yeah, but I didn't move for a long time after he left the room. The next morning was weird. Mason was back, all sunshine and fried egg energy, completely unaware that his older brother had kissed his best friend less than 12 hours earlier. I sat across from him at the tiny kitchen table, trying not to look suspicious while I picked at toast I couldn't taste. Eli came in last, hair wet from a shower, smelling like his usual clean woodsy cologne that messed me up more than I'd ever admit. Morning, he said casually. I looked up. He met my eyes for half a second, enough to know he hadn't forgotten, wasn't brushing it off. But that was all. Mason didn't notice a thing. We packed up later that afternoon. The drive back to the city was filled with Mason's playlist, which leaned heavily into early 2000s alt-rock, and Eli stayed mostly quiet in the back seat. I glanced at him once in the rearview mirror. He caught me. Smirked. Just a little, like a secret. Back in the city, everything should have gone back to normal, but it didn't. Now I knew what Eli's lips felt like. I knew what his voice sounded like when it wasn't joking or teasing, but soft and close. And every time we ended up in the same room, that same electricity sparked between us again, even when we pretended it wasn't there. 3 days passed before we were alone again. Mason had gone to his girlfriend's place for the night. I stopped by to drop off some books he left in my car, thinking I'd just hand them off and go. Eli opened the door. "You coming in, or just dropping stuff?" he asked, standing barefoot in jeans and a worn baseball tee that should have been illegal. I stepped inside. He shut the door. Neither of us said anything right away. He took the books, tossed them on the side table, then turned back toward me. "You've been avoiding me," he said, not accusing, just stating. "I haven't," I lied. He raised a brow. I sighed. "Okay, maybe a little. Why?" "Because I don't know what this is," I admitted, "and I don't want to make it worse." Eli stepped closer. "Make what worse?" "Mason," I said. "Us. This. Whatever it is." Eli didn't move. But his eyes searched mine carefully, like he was trying to read something I didn't even know I was saying. "I've never done anything like this before," he said finally. "Never kissed a guy. Never thought about it this seriously. But you kissed me." He nodded. "Yeah, I did. And I haven't stopped thinking about it. Neither had I." Eli stepped even closer, close enough that I could smell that same clean scent, close enough that his voice dropped an octave. "I want to see where this goes," he said, "but only if you do too." My heart pounded so hard I was sure he could hear it. "I do," I said. "I just don't want to sneak around." "I'm not asking you to," he said. "But let's be real. We tell Mason right now, what do you think happens?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. "I'm not ashamed of this," Eli added, "but I don't want to rush it either. I want this to be ours for a minute. Just ours, before anyone else gets a say." I looked at him. Really looked, and I realized he wasn't playing. This wasn't a fling. This was a guy trying, maybe for the first time, to figure out something real. Something that mattered. And he wanted to do it with me. So I said yes. Yes to something slow. Yes to something secret. For now. Yes to the nights when we'd sit too close on the couch, and the mornings when our hands would brush in the kitchen, and the quiet, impossible feeling of falling for someone I thought I'd buried years ago. Keeping it quiet was harder than I thought. Not because I wanted to shout it from the rooftops, though some mornings I woke up with the kind of stupid grin that felt impossible to hide, but because it meant holding something real in the dark, like cupping a flame in your palms and hoping no one sees the glow. Eli and I didn't put labels on it. We didn't have a big talk or write rules on a whiteboard. It was just a thing we shared now, quiet, steady, ours. The stolen moments became part of the rhythm. He'd knock on my door at night, soft, barely audible. I'd let him in without a word. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we didn't. Sometimes he'd just crawl into bed beside me, fully clothed, and fall asleep with his arm draped across my waist like it was the most natural thing in the world. And it felt like it was. It wasn't about sex. Not yet. It was about trust, about learning how to be near each other without flinching, about seeing the lines in his face soften in the low light, about the way he'd touch my hand absently while reading something on his phone, like he didn't even realize he was doing it. I think that's what got me the most, how easy it was, how much sense it made, even though it absolutely shouldn't have. Of course, it didn't stay secret forever. Secrets never do. One Saturday, Mason invited a few people over. Just a chill night, beers and pizza, no real plan. I showed up early to help set up, and Eli was already there, barefoot again, dragging a cooler into the backyard. "Help me with this?" he asked, nodding toward the folding chairs. I followed him out, grabbing a couple from the shed. We were alone for maybe 2 minutes, and I could already feel the pull, like my whole body leaned toward his without asking permission. He must have felt it too, because just before we walked back inside, he glanced over at me and said, "Later?" I nodded. One word. That's all it took. The night was normal. Laughter, music, the usual light roasting from people who knew you too well. But I kept catching Eli's eye across the yard. He didn't say much, just watched. Calm, like he was waiting. It made my skin hum. I left before midnight, claiming an early shift the next morning. 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Eli, I'm outside." I pulled on a hoodie and slipped downstairs. He was leaning against his car, hands in his pockets, moonlight glinting off the hood. We didn't speak until we were back in my apartment. Door shut. World sealed off. He reached for me then. No hesitation, no build-up, and I fell into him like I'd been waiting all night for it. This kiss was different. Not careful, not slow. It was hungry, breathless, all the words we hadn't said crammed into every touch. My hands found his jaw, his back, his hips. His fingers dug into my shirt like he needed to hold on to something. We stumbled back to the couch, and I felt the heat between us shift. Not frantic, not rushed, just there, rising. Eli pulled back first. His forehead rested against mine. His breath was uneven. "I want you," he said, "but I don't want to mess this up." "You won't," I whispered. "We won't." He kissed me again, slower this time, grounding. Then he pulled away fully and sat beside me, pulling me close until I was tucked against him, legs tangled, heartbeat sinking. "I'm staying here tonight," he said simply. I smiled. Good. We didn't take it further that night. We just stayed there, warm, connected, alive in a way that felt like something real, like something beginning. The next morning I woke up to him still beside me, one arm slung over my waist, his breathing deep and steady. His lips parted slightly, a faint crease in his brow, like he was dreaming of something heavy. I wanted to freeze time, but instead I leaned in and kissed his shoulder. He stirred, barely, and smiled without opening his eyes. "Morning," he mumbled. "Hey," he pulled me in tighter. "I could get used to this," he said, his voice still rough with sleep. "Me too," I replied. And I meant it. The morning didn't stay ours for long. Eli had just pulled on his hoodie when his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then at me. "Mason," he said. My stomach dropped. "I told him I stayed at a friend's place last night," he added. "He wants to grab brunch." "Did you?" Eli shook his head. "I didn't say anything, but he knows something's up." I nodded, heart in my throat. It was inevitable, I guess. But that didn't make it easier. "I should go," Eli said, "but come back later," I said before I could stop myself. He smiled. "Yeah, I will." He left with one last glance over his shoulder, and I stood there alone in my living room, trying to figure out what the hell we were doing. We didn't talk about Mason for the rest of the day, or the next. Things between Eli and me just kept going. Quiet, steady, under the radar. But it started getting harder to pretend we weren't something. He'd reach for my hand when we crossed paths in the kitchen. He'd sit next to me at his parents' place just a little too close, and the way he looked at me, that wasn't the look of someone who was hiding anymore. Then it happened. We were at his house. Mason had just stepped out to get ice cream or something, and Eli and I were in the garage, looking for an old extension cord. It was stupidly hot, both of us sweating, frustrated, and weirdly giddy. Eli grabbed my hand to pull me up from behind a stack of boxes, and something in me just snapped. I kissed him. Hard, fast, needy, and just as fast, I pulled away. "Sorry," I muttered, but Eli grabbed me and kissed me again, deeper this time. That's when we heard the garage door creak open. We jumped apart, Mason stepped inside, squinting at the light. "Found it," he said, holding up the ice cream. "You guys still alive in here?" Eli's breathing was uneven. So was mine. "We're good," he said quickly. Mason didn't look convinced. His eyes flicked between us. "Okay," he said slowly. "Anyway, come inside. Ice cream's melting." We didn't say anything until later that night. I was back home. My phone buzzed. Eli. "I think he knows." Me. "Maybe it's time he did." A long pause. Then, Eli. "You're right. I'll talk to him." He did. The next day, I got a text from Mason. "Mason, can we talk?" My chest tightened, but I agreed. We met at a coffee shop, both of us quiet for the first few minutes. Then Mason sighed. "So, my brother." I looked at him, waiting. He shook his head, almost smiling. "You two really thought I wouldn't notice?" I started, but he cut me off. "It's okay," he said. "Weird. But okay." I blinked. "Really? I mean, it's my brother," he said, shrugging. "And you. It's a combo I never saw coming, but I've seen how he looks at you. It's different. It's not just something." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "It's not." "Then you've got my blessing," he said, grinning. "Just don't make me hear about anything weird, all right?" I laughed, relief crashing through me. "Deal." After that, it felt like we could finally breathe. No more sneaking around, no more stolen glances or half-hidden touches. Eli started coming over openly. We went to dinners, we met up at bookstores. He even started helping me with my garden, claiming he liked the peace, but mostly just liking the excuse to be around. One night, a few weeks later, we were lying in my bed, both of us half asleep. Eli turned to me, brushing a thumb across my cheek. "You know I've never done this before, right?" he said quietly. "I know. But I want to." I took his hand in mine. "Then let's keep doing it," I whispered. "One day at a time." He smiled, and just like that, we fell asleep. Arms tangled, hearts steady, knowing this wasn't just a fling or an accident or some unfinished business from the past. This was real. This was ours.